Hello, everybody. It's Dr. Stuart Allen Swerdlow.
And Janet Diane Moria Swerdlow.
And this is the Expansions News Podcast for the second week of February 2020. And as you all probably have known by now, President Trump was completely acquitted of the impeachment attacks by the Democrats this past week. And during his State of the Union address, which he actually gave the day before he was acquitted, he pointed out that the Democrats were involved in attempting to make a bitter spirit for the United States, and he accused them of wanting to take away the health care of the American citizens, take away your doctor, abolish private insurance entirely, while creating a lure for illegal immigration. And of course, at the end of his speech, lovely Speaker of the House Nancy Pants Pelosi ripped up her speech celebrating a free, robust, and prosperous America, and that tells you exactly who you need to vote for in November, because the Democrats have obviously been completely taken over by extremely left-wing, anarchical factions from George Soros, of course. He also went on to say that he publicly challenged the Democrats on policy grounds, while reminding everyone what he called a blue-collar boom in this country. President Trump introduced a soldier who was back from deployment, which was a surprise for his wife, who didn't know that he was coming. He also awarded radio host Rush Limbaugh the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Of course, we know that Rush Limbaugh has stage 4 cancer. And he issued an academic scholarship for a needy family and introduced a surviving member of the Tuskegee Airmen, all of which the Democrats condemned afterwards. He said that there were over 130 legislators in this chamber that he's talking to who have endorsed legislation that would bankrupt a nation by providing free taxpayer-funded health care to millions of illegal aliens, forcing taxpayers to subsidize free care for anyone in the world who unlawfully crosses our borders. These proposals would raid the Medicare benefits our seniors depend on, while acting as a powerful lure to the illegal immigration. President Trump said, under the last administration, more than 10 million people were added to the food stamp rolls. Under my administration, 7 million Americans have come off of food stamps, and 10 million people have been lifted off of welfare. Of course, Nancy was in the background saying, it's not true, it's not true. But it is true. And if you look at Nancy Pelosi district in California, you will find people living on the streets, pooping on the streets, homeless people, diseases. The most disgusting area of San Francisco belongs to Nancy Pelosi. And that's what she and her friends want to do to the rest of the country. Keep that in mind. So the United States now has the lowest unemployment in over 50 years. Blacks, Hispanics, and new graduates have the lowest unemployment ever. And now we will see the Democrats pay the price for their evil deeds. Pelosi committed a crime on national television by destroying an official government document, and she is going to be charged with that this week, actually. Now to another major story that goes on every single day and it's been hyped up, and I talked about it last week, but I'll continue today. There was an interview with Dr. Francis Boyle, who drafted the Biological Weapons Act and has given a detailed statement admitting that the 2019 Wuhan coronavirus is an offensive biological warfare weapon, and that the World Health Organization, WHO, already knows about it. Francis Boyle is a professor of international law at the University of Illinois College of Law. He drafted the U.S. domestic implementing legislation for the Biological Weapons Convention, known as the Biological Weapons Anti-Terrorism Act of 1989. And he was approved unanimously by both the House of the U.S. Congress and signed into law by President George Bush. Dr. Boyle discusses the coronavirus outbreak in Wuhan, China, and the biosafety level 4 laboratory from which he believes the infectious disease escaped. He believes the virus is potentially lethal and an offensive biological warfare weapon or bio warfare weapons agent genetically modified with gain of function properties, which is why the Chinese government originally tried to cover it up and is now taking drastic measures to contain it. Dr. Boyle, contains that the World Health Organization knows full well what is going on, and he details how the Chinese biowarfare agents working at the Canadian lab in Winnipeg were involved in smuggling the coronavirus to Wuhan lab from where it was believed to have been leaked. Now it gets even more interesting because he goes on to say that there was a security breach by Chinese nationals at the Canadian National Microbiology Lab in Winnipeg, where the novel coronavirus was allegedly stored with other lethal organisms. Why would Canada store biowarfare weapons if they're neutral and they don't have aggressive armies or attack anyone anywhere? Why would Canada have that?
Makes no sense.
That's very interesting, Justin. And last May, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police were called in to investigate the Chinese, and the Chinese were kicked out of the facility, and the chief Chinese scientist, Dr. Xiang Guo, that's interesting, was allegedly making trips between Winnipeg and Wuhan. It's highly probable that the 2019 organism is a weaponized version of the NCOV, that's the name of the thing, discovered by Saudi doctors in 2012. So the Chinese must grant the world total transparency. The truth must come out. If the Chinese officials are innocent, they have nothing to hide. If they're guilty, they will refuse to cooperate and cover it up, and they are starting to arrest and sequester their own citizens, people who are sick in their own homes. The Chinese army is coming and dragging them out and taking them away. So that means that they know there's something up.
So President Trump said that he thought that President Xi was handling it very well.
Well, I tell you, this whole thing was a deep state sabotage of China for letting President Xi agree to trade agreements with Trump and destroy the deep state agreements with China. So that China's being punished. Someone purposely let this out, and now the Chinese have to fill it up or clean it up. Now, could it be that Justin Trudeau, the illegitimate son of Fidel Castro, allowed the creation of the virus for China and covered it up by saying the Chinese stole it? And let's not forget that Mr. Trudeau was also involved in Uranium One, where he illegally allowed uranium to be transferred from the United States through Canada to Syria and Iran.
There's a lot of territory up there in Canada.
Mr. Trudeau is not so nice.
There's a lot of area up there in Canada where there are no people, where a lot of things could go on up there.
And we've been to Winnipeg, and you know how isolated that place is.
Well, and then that's further north. It's like nothing out there.
And so Prime Minister Untrudeau needs to come forward, and he probably should be arrested for global treason. Now, speaking of the virus, physicians from Thailand say that they may have found a curative treatment for the coronavirus after they used a cocktail of antiviral medications to treat a woman with the illness this past week. According to Thailand's health ministry, the 70-year-old Chinese woman tested negative for the virus 48 hours after she was treated with an anti-HIV drug, and it's called lopinavir and ritonavir, and large doses of the anti-flu drug oseltamivir. A lot of veers going on there. And I also saw a story on UK News that said a British teacher who was living in Wuhan and who had the coronavirus, that he cured himself by drinking hot whiskey and honey.
Yes,
I think that should be the major cure for everybody, even if they don't have the virus. Now, This is a very, very serious story. And I hope that most of you watched the video and read the article that I posted on my blog from the Fox News, Tucker Carlson. And it's an extremely important story because right now there's a bill in Congress called the New Way Forward Act, and it's got no publicity on most of the news, and also says a lot about the news. The legislation is sponsored by 44 House Democrats, including, guess who? Surprise! Ilhan Omar of Minnesota, who's also under investigation by ICE for illegal immigration here, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, whose real name, as I told you weeks ago, is Julia Salazar. She's not Alexandria, whatever. She's Julia Salazar. She's a fake and a puppet of George Soros. And interestingly, the new legislation is about 4,400 words, which is exactly the length of the U.S. Constitution. I wonder why they did that. Because they're trying to replace the Constitution. The document was produced by the Democrats to promote the bill, and it says basically convictions should not lead to deportation.
Wonder why she has that in there.
Yeah, I wonder why. Especially Omar, she's desperate to get that through. The bill targets felony convictions, serious crimes that send you to prison for years. A press release from Representative Jesus Garcia, I wonder if he's legal or not, a Democrat from Illinois, is explicit about this. Garcia brags that the bill will break the prison to deportation pipeline. How does it do that? Because under current U.S. law, legal U.S. immigrants can be deported if they commit an aggravated felony or a crime of moral turpitude that is a vile, depraved act like molesting a child. Under the New Way Forward Act, crimes of moral turpitude are eliminated entirely as a justification for deportation. And the category of aggravated felony gets eliminated also. Now, under the current law, immigrants who commit serious crimes such as robbery, fraud, child sexual abuse must be deported regardless of the sentence they receive. Other crimes, less severe, like racketeering, require deportation as long as the perpetrator receives at least a 1-year sentence. But if this bill passes the House and Senate and is signed into law by the President, there will no longer be any crimes that automatically require deportation. No. And one crime, falsifying a passport, will be made immune from deportation no matter what. So we could just make up our own passport, like, look, I got a from Wakanda, the Republic of Wakanda. Okay, that will take that.
This is really crazy stuff.
Yeah, guess who made it? AOC, Julia Salazar. Because apparently 9/11 never happened, and we no longer care about fake government documents. There are people who commit rape, child abuse, and even manslaughter and receive sentences of fewer than 5 years. In the New Way Forward Act, if it becomes law, immigrants who commit those crimes and receive those sentences would remain in the country. They'll all be eligible for citizenship also.
Plus we have to support them.
The bill would grant sweeping new powers to immigration judges, allowing them to nullify a deportation order. In other words, anti-American immigration judges, and apparently there's many of them, would have a blank check to open the borders with no vote required. The current law also states that those who have committed drug crimes abroad or any crimes involving moral turpitude are ineligible to immigrate here. The New Way Forward Act abolishes that statute. So a Mexican drug cartel leader could be released from prison in Mexico, then freely come to America immediately, and if he wants, he could come here illegally, and it wouldn't be a crime. Because if you were waiting for this, the bill also decriminalizes illegal entry into America, even by those previously deported.
This is like bizarre.
Come on, everybody, doors open, free champagne.
It's worse than bizarre.
According to the document promoting the bill, According to this document promoting the bill, criminalizing illegal entry into America is white supremacist. Listen, I don't care if you are from the North Pole and you're as white as snow. If you come here illegally, get the hell out, okay?
Well, and especially
Period.
if you're a criminal, we don't want
So
you.
if I want to break into France and I say, hey, I'm coming into France whether you like it or not, and they want to deport me, are they racist somehow?
Like I said,
Really?
it's really bizarre.
AOC I don't think she has 3 brain
But I'm
cells.
surprised this is even,
I'm surprised it's even
Right.
allowed in the door.
Right.
Now, to detain illegal immigrants, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, known as ICE, would have to prove in court that the illegal immigrants are dangerous or a flight risk. But of course, ICE wouldn't be allowed to use a detainer's prior criminal behavior as proof that he or she is dangerous, because that's banned, so they can prove nothing. So if the detainee claims to be gay or transgender or under 21 or can't speak English and an interpreter isn't immediately available, they just get a free pass. Like, okay, just go ahead. Oh, you think you're a lamp today? Yeah, lamps are allowed. Go on.
As
So-
long as it's not a white lamp.
Yeah, if you're a white lamp, you're racist. I'm sorry. It would be much harder to arrest an illegal alien than it is to arrest you, who was born here and raised here and is a legal citizen. They can arrest you faster than those other people. How do you like that, American citizens? They are the protected class here, and you are the problem. And how about this? They're going to use taxpayer money to bring deported criminals back to America. The bill would not only abolish your right to control who lives in your own country, but it invents a new right in return, the right to come home.
This
It's
isn't
not their
their
home.
It's not their home.
Yeah, they'll go back to Nicaragua. That's their home. They have a right to go back there,
Yeah,
okay?
I agree with that.
The bill says the government is to create a pathway for those previously deported to apply to return to their homes and family in the United States.
We're also here illegally.
Who are also here illegally and committing
I
crimes.
don't think France would go for this. Their
No,
people
but
would
probably
be rioting.
Germany would. Germany lets every.
Right, but the
Yeah.
French people would be rioting in the streets over this.
Yeah, the Department of Homeland Security must spend taxpayer dollars transporting convicted criminal illegal aliens back into the United States.
That's funny.
And who's going to be eligible for these free flights? Tens of thousands of people kicked out of this country for all kinds of crimes: sexual abuse, robbery, assault, drug trafficking, weapons trafficking, human trafficking. Come on back.
I think she ought to be put in jail
I think
for
she should.
this.
I'm sorry, and I know this is
horrible.
bad, but she needs to be,
Uh-uh.
you know what. From 2002 to 2018, 480,000 people were deported for illegal entry or re-entry into America. And under this bill, you would have to buy them all a plane ticket to come back. The tickets alone would cost about $1 billion, and that's before the Democrats make you start paying for their free health care, which they plan to do also.
Probably food stamps.
You know, I think
and-
we should move to like
Yeah.
Nicaragua and then come back and
Yeah.
get all this stuff.
That-
I think that's a
we
good,
could get a
good
free
plan. Like we
plane
go
ticket
to
to
Guatemala,
Yeah.
stay there and say, oh, let's go, illegally to U.S. and we
Well,
get all these stuff.
And free plane tickets back.
Yeah, maybe business class even. It's hard to believe any American would put these ideas on paper, much less pass them into law. Yet remarkably, the press has ignored it. Scores of Democrats have backed it, but the bill hasn't been mentioned in the New York Times or on CNN, the communist news network, or even in any other kind of news network. They don't think you should know about it, and that's dangerous. And there's a growing part of the Democratic Party that views America as essentially an illegitimate rogue state, in which everything must be destroyed and remade: our laws, our institutions, freedoms, history, and our values, and an entirely new country in which resistance is crushed and they're in charge forever. Now, luckily, President Trump tweeted, "This will never happen."
Directly in accordance to this particular.
He said this one, and it cannot happen. I can't believe this stupid witch can even bring this, say, look what I want everyone to vote for. She's out of her freaking mind. But AOC and her cronies should be arrested and tried for treason. George Soros is their puppet master. He betrayed his own people in World War II, and George Soros, although they say he's a Jew, he's as Jewish as the Pope. He admitted in an interview on 60 Minutes years ago that he helped the Nazis take materials and goods away from Jews and transport them to concentration camps, and he felt no guilt. Okay? So it's anti-Semitic to talk about him? Bullshit. I'm not politically correct, and this next story is going to prove it.
Uh-oh.
Yes, because we're all hearing about how we should pay reparations for the slaves and the, who've been dead for a long time already.
Well, not that, like we said, it's not just a black issue.
So my ancestors, maybe we should ask Egypt to give me reparations for the last 2,000 years. How about that one?
No, we could get a lot of money that way, maybe.
Because what we're forgetting is that Islam's role in facilitating the transatlantic slave trade. Slavery is as old as humanity, and before all of Islam and Europeans, the Greeks, the Romans, they all had a slave trade. And when Christianity was created and it spread throughout the Roman Empire, between the 4th and 7th centuries, slavery was pretty much becoming extinct. Then Islam came into being, and they were not the first to exploit it, but they were the most effective to perfect it and thrive on it. And untold millions of non-Muslims were enslaved by them, and including when they attacked Europe, it's estimated that the Muslims took 15 million European slaves alone, just in Europe. And I don't understand why black Americans take Muslim names, because they were the first to enslave them. And this information said that the slave raids in Africa began in the mid to late 7th century, long before Europeans ever got involved. And according to Muslim records, astronomical numbers of Africans, in the millions, were enslaved in the name of their jihad. And we also know that African tribesmen captured their own people and sold them to the Europeans and to the Muslims. And it says that slavery was a very endemic part of Islamic interaction with Africa. They had massive slave raiding and slave trading. Many of the slaves were captured and sold and sent to the transatlantic slave trade long before the Europeans came. And of course it says, Islam, you want to know what Islam did in the past? Look what they're doing right now. North Africa, Muslim countries and Central Asian Muslim countries have the most slaves in the world right now. And I always have to end with a weather story. And of course, here it is, February, which is the middle of summer in New Zealand. And once again, the reports of snow near Queenstown in the mountains of the Mount Cook region. And that's the middle of summer in New Zealand. And just a quick side note, because people don't realize that when we post these podcasts and it goes to YouTube, we get all these comments from these very brilliant people who think they know more than me.
No one knows more than you.
Yeah. And so, you know what, people? To those who comment against my historical information, I'm not going to argue with you and go back and forth. I'm not going to play that game. I've researched and I've studied and I have gone to every single location and spoken to those people. Have you, the ones of you who make the biggest noise, have you done a damn thing? Have you opened a book? Now, or do you just follow what CNN tells you? So open your minds and close your mouth. The comments some of you make reveal your lack of true knowledge and history, so I'm assuming you must be Democrat. So I'm not politically correct, and I will tell the truth, whether you like it or not, and I will just delete your negative, stupid comments that actually are incorrect.
Okay. So, I also have a lot of news to share. Some of it very eye-opening, I do believe.
More than mine? Well,
I can't say it was more, but maybe equivalent. So first of all, I'm just going to start with some things that are kind of just interesting for everybody to know. So the first, I don't know if you saw the picture of Joe Biden kissing his 19-year-old granddaughter on the lips.
No, I don't like to look at anything about
during his
it.
speech at his campaign trail event ahead of the Iowa caucus. So I wanted to bring that to attention because you should not be kissing your 19-year-old granddaughter on the lips.
Did he stick his tongue in her mouth?
She didn't say, nor did he, but he arrived with holding her hand. So, and he's not, decrepit
Maybe she was
where he needed to do
maybe
that.
she was holding him up.
I don't know. But anyway, so that I think that's very inappropriate. But we've been talking a lot, and I am going to talk. One of my main stories is going to be about all this transgender stuff because I have some very interesting research on that. But moving along, like we were talking about your coronavirus thing there.
Not my coronavirus.
Somebody's coronavirus. Now, of course, a lot of it's always as well based on fear. So with this now in the public venue in mind, now there's a new report, a study, that says that dozens of previously unknown viruses are being discovered in a 15,000-year-old glacier.
Wow.
And the study warns that the rapid glacier melt around the world has the potential to release ancient viruses and bacteria that have been trapped for tens to hundreds of thousands of years.
That's just not true.
But I'm telling you what they're telling the people.
I know what they're telling people. It's not true.
Yeah, it says that in the study that some tests found that 18 of the 33 viruses were linked to a host at some point, which means that they were infectious either before or after the ice formed and likely influenced the populations of other microbes. The study warns that because glaciers around the world are rapidly shrinking, this could release microbes and viruses that have been trapped for tens to hundreds of thousands of years.
Oh, BS.
So you're supposed to get frightened over that, and what you're seeing going on with the coronavirus.
That's ridiculous.
And in India, well, this was also very interesting. The Indian government, and India governs a lot of people.
Oh, 1.3 billion.
They're telling their citizens to use homeopathy to treat the China coronavirus.
Okay.
So, however, the article, this was in Newsweek, the article is calling India's, telling them to use homeopathic practices as pseudoscientific.
Who said this?
Newsweek.
Oh, duh.
Yeah. The Indian government's press released a statement recommending the members use ancient Hindu and ancient Greek homeopathic practices to prevent and treat the new coronavirus. And they gave, of course, hygiene recommendations, but they also told the people to take unproven approaches. Now, these are ancient practices.
Yeah, they're unproven for the last 5,000 years.
But this article is saying unproven. So
Yeah.
they would suggest they consume herbal drinks based on ancient Hindu Ayurveda, the ancient Greek system of Unani, which is also used in countries including Iran and Pakistan. They endorse rubbing alternative medicines on the chest, scalp, and nostrils, squirting sesame oil into the nose each morning. And the article continues to repeat these are pseudo-medical practices, but they're not. They're ancient from, thousands of years old. They take a holistic approach to physical and mental health and are aimed at creating and maintaining a balance in the body. So Ayurvedic treatments include plants, animals, minerals, and metals, which the U.S. Food and Drug Administration warns can make some products potentially harmful.
Uh-huh.
And the WHO has issued similar warnings on the potential harms of Unani medicine.
Yeah.
So all that I'm extremely interested.
Yeah, the World Health Organization also injected HIV into African citizens, so we shouldn't be listening to them.
And speaking of some interesting information on Islam, Prince Charles has been praising the Islamic culture and says he prays in Arabic for Middle East peace.
Right.
He said
He can't even speak English properly.
He said he's taken a special interest in the unrest in Iran and would like to visit the country again after last traveling to the Islamic Republic in 2004 for the British Red Cross. He says he prays very hard all the time
Like him and Pelosi.
for peace in Iran and the Middle East, and he added that sometimes he even prays in Arabic, using the word inshallah, meaning God willing.
Except Iran, they speak Persian and not Arabic.
So I think it's a very interesting story that I don't know what they're doing over there, but lots of weird things.
No, Charles needs to also go with AOC back to wherever she came.
Or Prince Harry maybe
Yeah,
needs
let
to
him
hide.
pay in Spanish with her.
Yeah, hide in Canada somewhere up there.
With Justin Castro Fidel, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And Uganda is reportedly planning to announce that it will open up an embassy in Jerusalem.
Yes, they're moving into Jerusalem.
On a spiritual level, Uganda regards Israel as the mother of Christianity. Ugandan Christians are no longer standing on one leg for Israel, but two in prayer and action.
Mm-hmm.
And thousands of Christians across Uganda sang, marched, waved Israeli flags while praying for the state of Israel, because everybody's praying for other states, in a series of events sponsored by Christians for Israel and intercessors for Uganda. If Uganda opens its embassy, it will be the third embassy to designate Jerusalem as Israel's capital, following the U.S., Guatemala, and they say Paraguay, which later then withdrew its decision. Did you know that?
Yeah, but they're going to change back again. And Brazil's also moving, and actually Uganda facilitated a meeting between Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and the military leader of Sudan.
Ah, interesting. So, and
And
Uganda.
Sudan is about to recognize Israel as well.
So we'll see what happens with that. And then, of course, this was kind of fascinating to me about the Oscars that took place not too long ago. Did you know that the Oscars nominees, all you had to do is be nominated, you got a $100,000 goodie bag.
See, that's why we never get those things.
I know, $100,000. So it lists everything.
And a goodie bag.
And a goodie
What's in
bag.
it?
Well,
Diamonds.
there's too much for me to go into here, but you can read the link. But the thing that interested me the most is the nominees gets a 12-day luxury yacht trip to the Antarctic for two. Now, why would they send them there?
Because they want to get rid of them?
Because there's all kinds of weird things
'Cause the
going on.
Nazis are there underneath
that
the
could be,
ice.
yep. So it's an ultra luxury yacht. It's called the Scenic Eclipse, which carries only 228 passengers. I wouldn't want
That's
to be
a
on
lot.
that.
Well, we were on what the ship.
Ours was carried about 450.
That many? I thought it was less than that.
Yeah, I think, well, maybe with crew and everything. I'm not sure. I'd have to look again. It's been a while. But anyway, I just thought it was interesting that they're sending them to Antarctica because that's a major ritual place. So these people are being rewarded by going to Antarctica. That's where they're going to do that.
They'll be sorry if they go by boat.
Now this begins my transgender issue thing because I've got some very interesting things. I talk a lot about that because it's like, and I brought this up last week. Who was behind all this stuff? So first of all, South Dakota politician Fred Deutsch, he sparked outrage for comparing transgender medical surgeries to Holocaust-era Nazi experiments.
Well, he's kind of right.
I agree. He said that he drafted a bill that would prohibit hormone treatment, puberty blockers, and gender confirmation surgery for children under 16.
Good. How about for
But
any child?
people yelled at him, so he actually apologized for his
Don't apologize
incredible
for being
comments.
right.
I agree. But then the House passed the bill and it will go on to the Senate. So I don't think he should
People-
apologize.
Stop apologizing for telling the truth.
Well, that shows you what the lobby is behind these people and how much they're being attacked. Because that's just what I'm hearing from the LGB community.
Yes, you know people in
I
there.
know a lot of them. And in the Journal of Medical Ethics, called the British Medical Journal, it's called the BMJ, there are gender-affirming doctors who wrote an article actually from the University of Michigan, I'm embarrassed to say.
That's very embarrassing.
Yes, and they said that there's a lack of guidance for trans providers of gender-affirming medical treatment, so they need to know how to handle the situation of parents who refuse to give consent to their children, who claim to identify with a gender incompatible with their biological sex. And the children want to be treated with puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and even sex reassignment surgery, but the parents don't want it. So the doctors have come together with this report to say this is how you get around the parents' objections to what happens to their children. So what they want to do is they want to call it neglect as a medical, legal term which can be used to initiate an evaluation by Child Protective Services and remove a parent as a child's legal guardian
Oh my gosh.
in the most severe instances.
Terrible.
They research supports invoking parental neglect when youth who experience extreme gender dysphoria are prevented from accessing medically recommended gender-affirming interventions. Now there's a woman, oh actually I guess it's a man, he's a detransitioner who identified as a woman for 13 years who tweeted that no child is trans in response to this. And it's a man who
He went back to being.
went back to me. He says it's disgraceful and repulsive that trans industry personnel discussing how to overcome or even go around parent objections to affirmatively sterilize and transition children.
Did he have his parts removed?
It didn't say, and I
Because
don't
then how do you
know.
put him back?
Well, that's the issue, and they go through all this stuff. So that's why I said that
And
this
it's
is
not
kind
like
of
Mr.
a
Potato Head.
this is kind of an involved story. So I've got a couple. This is like the precursor to I'm building up to a big story. So then the next story I want to tell you about is California bill seeking to make sex offender registration optional
What?
for LGBT statutory rape cases. So in other words, there's a bill that would grant judges the discretion to decide if a person should have to register as a sex offender if that person is within 10 years of the age of consent of a consensual sexual partner. So this means if somebody's 14 and they have sex with somebody who's 24, there's 10 years, that 24-year-old does not necessarily have to be registered as a sex offender.
Okay, so what if they were 20 and the other person was 10?
That's still well, it has to be 14. So I guess, I don't know, but this is between 14 and 17. That's what they're saying. So a person who has vaginal intercourse has to be registered as a sex offender. But if they have anal intercourse, they don't have to be registered.
Why?
Well, they're claiming that's because it's this agenda. So there's Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez, who actually is a Democrat, San Diego, who said that the bill was dangerously lenient regarding sexual relations between adults and minors. That it doesn't matter what type of sex. The problem is there's no sex between a 24 and a 14-year-old that's consensual.
Exactly.
So the comment over
this... Democrat with a brain?
The comment over this is that there's a growing trend to normalize adult-child sexual relationships, particularly within the LGBT community. Now, this is what I want to address, because it says pedophilia, well, this part is true. Pedophilia is quietly approaching normalization in society. Well, that's not true. Under the rainbow banner of inclusivity. Masquerading as age gap love, predators are inching ever closer to gaining society's acceptance of their sexual preferences for young boys and girls. Now, this is the big thing from my part of the podcast. LGB added the T. It used to just be LGB. Mm-hmm. And everybody that I know, the LGB, lesbian, gay, bisexual, everybody is against this trans stuff because this is where they're destroying people. So I have a person in the community who sent me this really well-researched article, which is rather lengthy, and I'm going to just highlight it for you, but it's very good. And this was written actually by a female who is an environmental activist, and she was deplatformed from a speaking venue of trans activists in 2013. And so her question was what my question, who's the power behind this group and what's the agenda? Because it's not the agenda of the LGBs. It's not their agenda, but all this stuff is being attacked on, and the people that I know are being attacked because they don't support all this other stuff that I've been reporting on. So this woman who wrote this article said that she began to examine the money behind the transgender project. She watched as all women's safe spaces, university, and sports opened their doors to any man who chose to identify as a woman, whereas men who identify as a trans woman, are at the forefront of the project. Women who identify as trans men seem more silent and invisible. So she noticed that there was a huge cultural change as the opening of sex-protected spaces was happening at such a fast pace and without consideration for the safety of women and girls, which we've talked about, all these sharing bathrooms, all this kind of things. Mm-hmm. Then she said she witnessed the overhaul in the English language with new pronouns, near tyrannical assault on those who did not use them, laws mandating new speech, laws overriding biological sex, people who spoke openly about it, or they were attacked and threatened. And these people that I know, they've also been receiving death threats and rape threats and all sorts of horrible things. So the woman is asking, is this really a civil rights issue for a tiny part of the population, or is there a bigger agenda with moneyed interests that we're not seeing?
Yeah, that's
it. So she went on to investigate the transgender movement and who's funding them, and she found exceedingly rich
who it is.
White men and women with enormous cultural influence are funding all of this. So yes, listen to this. Now this was very interesting to me. I'm gonna mix up my paperwork here. It begins with Jennifer Pritzker, who is a male who identifies as transgender, and your favorite person,
George Soros.
Yes, George Soros. Martine Rothblatt, who's a male who identifies as a transgender and transhumanist. Tim Gill, a gay man. Drummond Pike, Warren and Peter Buffett, John Stryker, a gay man. Mark Bonham, a gay man. Rick Weiland, a deceased gay man whose philanthropy is still LGBT-oriented. And most of these billionaires fund the transgender lobby and organizations through their own organizations and including corporations. So why are these billionaires putting all this money out? So they used to be LGB, okay, like I said, lesbian, gay, bisexual. Mm-hmm. Then they added that T on there, and this is where things become interesting.
They have many other letters too, I think.
They do, but the T is the big thing, because that's where the money is made. Apparently there is an organization called Tides Foundation that large corporations and philanthropists and organizations can send enormous sums of money to the Tides Foundation, and this foundation anonymously distributes it. So overall, right now, they're saying that the LGBT agenda is receiving $424 million a year to make this thing grow. So again, why? It says it's enough money to change the laws, uproot the language, force new speech on the public, censor, create an atmosphere of threat for those who do not comply. And it says the first gender clinic for children opened in Boston in 2007. Now, in the past 10 years, there are 30 clinics for children. In the United States alone, the largest, just one of those 30, serves 725 children. One clinic. It says there's an explosion in transgender medical infrastructure across the U.S. and the world to treat transgender people. They're building hospital wings, developing specialized surgeries. Doctors are being trained in cadaver symposiums across the world. They're learning to do phalloplasty, vaginoplasty, facial feminization surgery, urethral procedures, and then more and more of the U.S. corporations are covering transgender surgeries, drugs, and other expenses. Puberty blockers are another growing market. Plastic surgery, because of organ transplants such as womb transplants for men who want to identify as women for future pregnancies. And the surgeries are being practiced on animals first. And it says the first successful womb implant from a deceased female donor to another female has been a success, and biogenetics is poised to be the investment of the future. It said the medical infrastructure being built, doctors being trained for various surgeries, clinics opening at warp speed, the media celebrating it. Transgenderism is poised for growth. The LGB, a once tiny group of people trying to love those of the same sex openly and be treated equally within society, have now been subsumed by capitalism and infiltrated by the medical industrial complex via transgenderism. So they're using the LGBs to put this forward because of capitalism. There's money invested in by governments, technology, pharmaceutical corporations to institutionalize and normalize transgenderism as a lifestyle choice. They're shaping the narrative about transgenderism. It's also important to note that through the trans lobby has sewn itself to the LGB umbrella that LGBT people are not lifelong medical patients, but the trans people are. So she's taking the example of this Jennifer Pritzker, who used to be a man, and his family is an American family of philanthropic billionaires worth approximately $29 billion who their money comes through Hyatt hotels and nursing homes, they're claiming. And they have massive investments in the medical industrial complex. So, transitioning individuals are medical patients for life, and this Pritzker family is only one family amongst a bunch of them, but she uses this, that he was used to be a family man, a decorated member of the armed forces, he's now transgender. Let me see. Like I said, I know it's a little lengthy, but and I've got it, as you can see, way down. But it's very interesting. So his family gives money. Then this cousin of this woman, served on, guess who? President Obama's Council for Jobs. She was National Co-Chair of Obama for America 2012, National Finance Chair of Obama 2008 presidential campaign, and she was influential in getting Obama elected. And he made transgenderism, Obama, a pet issue of his administration and held the meeting at the White House, the first ever for transgenderism.
Well, because he's married to Michael.
The administration quietly applied the power of the executive branch to make it easier for transgender people to alter their passports. Here's their passport thing again.
Just make a fake one.
Yeah, that's what we're finding
even
out.
in crayon, they'll have to accept it.
It works. They get cross-sex treatment at Veterans Administration facilities, access public school restrooms and sports programs based on gender identity. And these are just a few of the transgender-specific policy shifts of Obama's presidency. Soros, there's that name, and Gill are two other major transgender movement funders who generated millions of dollars to get Obama elected. And under Obama and President George W. Bush, the federal government also funded the Tides Foundation $83 million, of which $48 million went to LGBTQ issues over the last 2 decades.
USC.
We can do a lot with $48 billion.
I'll even take half of it.
Yeah, and her brother, so now this is still the Pritzker family. So Penny Pritzker's brother is an American venture capitalist, entrepreneur, philanthropist, business owner, including clinical innovations, another one of the largest medical device companies, and in 2017 acquired Brenner Medical, which is another significant medical group offering innovative products in the fields of obstetrics and gynecology, aka womb transplants. Okay, he sits on the board of directors at Duke University, where they are making advances in cryopreserving women's ovaries. So they're plucking out everybody's organs to turn them into something they're not. So the woman goes on to say, we are looking at why this is framed as a civil rights issue when the main issue seems to be capital and social engineering. There doesn't seem to be a sphere of influence untouched by Pritzker money, from early childhood education and universities to law, medical institutions, the LGBT lobby, organizations, politics, and the military. If they were the only ones funding the institutionalization of transgender ideology, they would still be fantastically influential, but they are joined by other exceedingly wealthy, influential white people who have ties to the pharmaceutical and medical industries. So they also have support by pharmaceutical giants such as Janssen Therapeutics, Johnson & Johnson, Viv, Pfizer, Abbott Laboratories, Bristol Myers, goes on and on, Google, Microsoft, Intel, Dell, IBM, Apple, Microsoft, Google, IBM, Yelp, PayPal. All these people are making money off of the people who are going along with this stuff. 53 other mostly tech corporations signed a brief pushing the U.S. Supreme Court to prohibit schools from keeping private facilities for students designated according to sex, i.e. bathrooms and sports and things like this. So this is why I'm telling you, who's behind this? This is it. It says that while the corporations were pushing for transgender bathrooms, they were fighting President Trump's travel ban and immigration policies. CNN made obvious connection between the corporation's interest in the immigration ban and commerce, but they did not make a connection between the corporation interest in transgender rights because of the money. So melding this manufactured medical issue with civil rights frame entails the continuance and growth of the problem. Transgenderism is framed as both a medical problem for the gender dysphoria of children who need puberty blockers and are being groomed for a lifetime of medical care, and as a brave and original lifestyle choice for adults. Now, Martine Rothblatt, one of these people who funds this stuff, suggests that everybody is transhuman and that by changing our bodies, by removing healthy tissue and organs and ingesting cross-sex hormones over the course of a lifetime is the same as wearing makeup, dyeing your hair, getting a tattoo.
No, it's not.
And it's just absolutely crazy. And trans activists are clamoring for a change from gender dysphoria to gender incongruence, which is going to be the next thing in the medical diagnosis, and the codes, which they have it listed here, ICD-11. And then, of course, the push is on for insurance-paid hormones and surgeries for everybody who believes his or her body is in any way incongruent with his or her gender identity. So body diversity appears to be the core issue, not gender dysphoria, and that unmooring people from their biology via language distortions to normalizing altering human biology. This ideology is being promoted as a civil rights issue by wealthy people with enormous influence who stand to personally benefit from their political activities. It behooves all of you to look at what the real investment is in prioritizing a lifetime of antibody medical treatments for a minuscule part of the population, building an infrastructure for them, and institutionalizing the way we perceive ourselves as human beings before being human becomes a quaint concept of the past. So there's a long article, I know, and that's, believe it or not, the highlights, but to me absolutely tells it right on the button who's behind it. So it's not the LGBT people, it is somebody else
People
using
who are not
them.
that.
It's somebody using
Exactly.
them. And that's what you need to understand, is
Right.
making everybody look
The
bad.
same people who are using Greta and all those other people.
Exactly. So then the rest of my news very fast. The Earth is about to enter a 30-year mini ice age, according to NASA.
We know that
We know
already.
that, so I just skip through that, and then
It may not be a mini one.
no, well, that's what they're claiming. And Elon Musk is claiming that he has a Neuralink machine where it has little threads that go into your brain and connect you.
Is he going to have that installed?
He's claiming it's for medical reasons, but we all know better than that. So that's coming down the pike, and of course he's very excited about that.
Sure he is.
I'm sure he is. And then, this was one of the most interesting stories after my big thing, was the fact that a British scientist claims that the icy seas on Jupiter's moon are probably home to alien life that are octopus-like creatures.
Oh, I hope so.
So how does she come up with that? Well,
Maybe
well,
she's been there.
Maybe. But what's interesting is there was a movie, which maybe you saw, which I never heard of, but it was a film in 2013 called The Europe Report.
No.
And 6 astronauts went on a privately funded mission to Jupiter's moon, and they found octopus-like creatures living under the surface.
Oh.
Excuse me.
Did they speak to them?
It doesn't say. I have to watch the movie. And it says this year there are 3 separate expeditions going to Mars. The ExoMars 2020 launches in July. It's a collaboration with the European Space Agency. We were there, right? And the Russian Space Agency, Roscosmos. And NASA's new rover is set to make landfall on the Red Planet February 2021. And the Hope Mars mission, funded by the UAE, set to launch this summer. So lots of news, but I'm very excited about that research that came to me about who's actually behind it, because it's no surprise, but now we see the far reaches and how the webs are set up for people.
It all points to one particular person, doesn't it?
Continually. All right, so with that going on, we got the webinars that the February ones are in full swing if you want to join March. Based on this book, if you don't have time, it's really no excuse, because people from all over the world are on it, and you get a recording afterwards, so you can still catch up with us. Then you have to tell your stuff, because you have too much stuff going on.
Well, Puerto Rico was supposed to be just research,
Yeah.
but now I've been asked to do lectures for politicians and so on, so I'll be doing that. Then Ecuador, of course, right after Puerto Rico, will be my very big seminar there. And in fact, the 10th, which is hopefully you'll see this before that, I have a little mini webinar in English and Spanish on 7 p.m. Ecuador time.
That's a mini webinar?
Yeah, it's like 30 minutes or so. Then on to Malta, where I will be doing an event with the Knights and the Duchess.
On the days too, or just the nights?
Yeah, you're so funny. And doing investitures and tours and hobnobbing with the royalty. I'm sure we'll talk about Meghan a lot. And then I'll be going to Turkey, actually doing lectures in Istanbul and Ankara, as well as 2 trips to Göbekli Tepe, the weekend of April 24 to 26, and repeat on May 1 to 3rd.
But I think isn't the
The
first,
first weekend is now fully booked, and so if you're interested to come, and it will be quite an amazing adventure, May 1 to 3 is still open.
Okay, because we have on the website that the deadline was February 1st.
Well,
It
that was
depends
for April.
It depends on the hotels. That's the issue, because this is the busy time of the year in Turkey. So if there are hotels open, you're still interested, you can register, and if we can get you a hotel, you can still come. If not, we'll give you your money back. So we'll see.
And then you have your
Then I go to Italy. Remember, speaking of alternative things, pseudoscience is what they would call it, FDA would call it. So we have here over 1,000 pages of medical information. And this, of course, the reason I'm showing you this is mountains, what we're going to climb in Italy.
You're going to climb
We're
out.
going to hike in Italy, depending on the weather, but this was taken up there as absolutely stunning photography. So that will be in June. We have the dates on the website. I have 3 spaces still available on this tour, and then directly after we're stopping on the way back to the U.S. Those of us who are coming from those of us who are already in Europe will be coming from Europe, stopping by Iceland. And if you're in the U.S. or in South America and you want to come, you can come this direction and meet us in Iceland. Have a wonderful, wonderful trip, because that time of year it's like 24 hours a day. So I'm really excited about that, and it's a great tour with a great price for Iceland, because Iceland's an expensive place. The place I'm taking in Italy is very reasonable. Iceland's a little bit more pricey, but it's going to be worth it, because I'm excited about that. And then we have this book will be coming out very soon.
Well, it's really already here. It's just
No, it'll be coming out very soon, and it will be shipping with the Heights of Spirituality. As soon as that arrives, they'll be arriving together here within the next, hopefully, maybe 10 days even. But the pricing is already up on the Facebook and website, so you can get special price on this. And I don't have an advanced copy of the Heights of Spirituality yet. And this is the 3rd that goes with these 2, King Bee and Template of God Mind. And then the Heights of Spirituality is the support companion book for these 3 when it gets here. So we have always lots of things going on, and lots of more books in the works that we plan to get out before the end of the year. So it's been a very busy time for us, as always. So that's what I have to say. That's a lot.
Yeah, and so be careful on Valentine's Day. You know, that's a blood ritual. It has nothing to do with love at all.
If you read our blogs, you will know that. If you get your membership on our site, www.expansions.com, less than $1 a day, you can have access to us and our Q&A blogs. You don't have to write stuff on the YouTube and Facebook, and which we're going to ignore if you do that.
That's why I give you nothing for Valentine's Day.
No.
Because I give you nothing because it's an evil day.
Yeah, I don't want anything on an evil day.
No. All right, well, until next time, we'll see you. Be safe and be careful.
Bye.
For now.